you might notice an obvious differentiation in tone from the early or macroethic and the latter-day macroethic. This one has a little bit more hope. Grace hides in disappointment, in failure and misery, and disguised as tragedy. The upheavals of humanity were microcosms of all life, and the upheavals of country were a microcosm of my life. The country was young, callow, still amending, still evolving, always with the promise of change. Throughout the never-ending COVID plague, racial tensions, political unrest, and the like, I was facing my own demons. I was young, callow, still amending, still evolving, always with the promise of change. The will to power, or the will to live, was synonymous with the will to evolve, and all life seemed to be reaching for the same thing. Humans were the only ones who didn't seem to know what they were reaching for. As the blindfolded donkey walks in circles, cranking the mill, assuming he's walked miles and miles, the human, stuck in cycles of pleasure and pain, walks up and down the same hill his whole life and calls it progress. At the end of the day, I departed with Camus' Sisyphus because my boulder didn't roll back down the hill. The hill was an eternal evolution, and the boulder was desire. The highest peak united oneself with the cosmos. By then, there was no longer a boulder to push, for the entire journey was about shedding the weight of the load, shedding desire. Headstrong is not a strength, I began to know. Only the ignorant believe themselves wise. All my perceived virtues were elusive perceptions, lies I made up to validate my being. Tragedy upon tragedy, failure upon failure, insult upon injury, I began to know as grace in disguise. Oh God, couldn't evolution be a little easier? One must imagine the first fish on dry land wasn't too happy in the water. The water must have been unbearable. Evolution was like that. Species transformed in quick spurts over short periods of time, not small changes over long periods of time. One could find the patterns of the cosmos in oneself, as the cosmos repeated itself from the universal to the earthly, the macro down to the micro. Pretending not to suffer was, perhaps, what all the other fish did that day the first fish left the water. Perhaps they're still swimming in circles in that same murky, acidic sludge, telling themselves they're happy enough, contented enough not to leave, not to change, not to seek anything new. Lying to oneself with blind optimism was just another deception, another delusion to avoid the inevitable, the impending requirement to living, which was and is always going to be change. Avoiding difficulty was not constructive motivation. Neither was guilt or pity. Wallowing in self-pity was walking in circles blindfolded like an ass. Evolution required courage. Oh God, why is my life so goddamn difficult? Why did this whole life feel like a series of attacks? I turned to a series of quotes I'd gathered over the years. Da Vinci, Martin Luther King, Jesus, Jefferson, Camus, Spider-Man. They had all said the same thing about responsibility. If you have the ability, you have the responsibility. MLK had highlighted the negative side of that sentiment by saying evil prevails when good men do nothing. Fact is, I knew I had the ability to go all the way. I had felt it within me my entire life. I could take a pit stop, me and my boulder, to wallow in misery, or sometimes just to admire the scenery, but I couldn't deny my ability, and therefore my responsibility. I knew that no matter what lay ahead, I would continue to climb, and there would be a space and time beyond this and that. This life was about evolution, and I had to start realizing evolution is beyond success and failure, pain and pleasure. I was a callow young human from a callow young species in a callow young country on a callow young earth. I would make friends with change, even the perceived negative aspects of it, because grace is always disguising itself as an obstacle. The shadows were always pointing to the light.
We're walking hand in hand. There's no face to face. We're all on the same side, in the same race.